Hello, welcome to Metro Nashville Public Schools High Impact Tutoring. This is Module 2, Early Literacy, for tutors who will be working with students in first and second grades. Here's an overview of the training modules. You have already completed Module 1, Getting Started. Next, I will guide you through Module 2, Early Literacy. This module is specifically designed for tutors who will be working with first and second grade literacy. You'll finish up with modules on Accelerating Scholars Technology and Childhood Protection and FERPA. Please take a moment to read through the objectives of this module. In this session, we will learn more about Metro Nashville's tutoring pilot and how it connects with building a foundation of strong early literacy. We'll learn more about the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement and its Sounds First approach to literacy instruction. We'll identify where to access the daily pacing guides and how to best plan for a successful tutoring session. First, let's take a look at how MNPS strives to build a strong foundation for reading through early literacy tutoring. Please follow along on your screen as I read this quote out loud. We need to give more students the right opportunities because the stakes are high. Research shows that children who don't learn to read by the end of third grade are likely to remain poor readers for the rest of their lives, and they're likely to fall behind in other academic areas too. People who struggle with reading are more likely to drop out of high school, to end up in the criminal justice system, and to live in poverty. But as a nation, we've come to accept a high percentage of kids not reading well. More than 60% of American fourth graders are not proficient readers, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And it's been that way since testing began in the 1990s. Emily Hanford, Hard Words. These disparities all too often affect marginalized students the most. If you are a student of color, an English language learner, or a student with learning and thinking differences, you are less likely to get the right opportunities in literacy instruction. This can cause obstacles in literacy development, which has negative effects on all other areas of academic development as well. The COVID-19 pandemic and associated school closures have caused even greater disparities in student performance. A September 1st, 2022 report on the current National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP, performance highlights the dramatic effect of the pandemic on student learning. 2 decades of growth for American students in reading and math were wiped away by just 2 years of pandemic-disrupted learning, according to national test scores. The need for effective, high-impact tutoring to support early literacy growth is clear. This training module will focus on the curriculum resources and strategies that you can use to best support the students you're working with. Here's an overview of our curriculum selections for elementary literacy tutoring. While MNPS understands that the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement and Core Knowledge Language Arts are closely aligned, Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement is specifically designed for students in pre-K through second grade. Because we want to keep the experience of early literacy students in grades 1 through 5 similar, we've selected to use Core Knowledge Language Arts in 3rd through 5th grades. Core Knowledge Language Arts is a comprehensive language arts curriculum program. While teaching skills in reading, writing, listening, and speaking, Core Knowledge Language Arts, or CKLA, also builds students' knowledge in vocabulary, in literature, history, geography, and science. A critical action of Accelerating Scholars Tutors is to support students with the main activities of the day. During this portion of the tutoring session, tutors listen to students read and may encounter instances when students are unable to pronounce or decode certain words. When this does occur, it's important that tutors support students by focusing on the sounds that letters make. When doing this, tutors are helping students to engage in phonemic awareness. This slide outlines the stages of language development. When students first enter school, they're typically at stage 1. They come with much of the vocabulary that they have learned by hearing others speak. When working with students during tutoring sessions, we want to remember to focus on the sounds that letters make. Learning letter sounds helps promote phonemic awareness. It's important to remember that during the tutoring sessions, tutors should focus on letter sounds as opposed to letter names. For instance, when students see the letter B, we want them to focus on B making the B sound, as opposed to simply saying the letter name, B. From a literacy perspective, the answer is clear. To read and write, children need to learn the sounds that letters make, not just their names. For example, C-A-T, no matter how fast you say it, never blends together to sound like the word cat. Rather, students need to focus on the sounds of the individual letters or phonemes. K, at. As you can see, when the sounds are blended together, it's much clearer what the word should be. As an additional support, we've provided a link to a video that goes through the correct way to pronounce the different phonemes. You can access this video on the supplemental training video link. During the 30-minute tutoring session, early literacy tutors will engage with students in tasks and activities that help students practice with learning letter sounds, decoding words, blending words, segmenting words, learning vocabulary, reading passages, and answering questions with evidence from the text. While each of these actions may not appear in every tutoring session, it's important that each tutor become familiar with the practices so that they can become best prepared to help students become fluent readers. Tutors should note that with each action, the good rule of practice is to lead with a sounds-first approach. Later in this module, we'll take an in-depth look at how to best guide students to effectively practice blending and segmenting the sounds. Next, let's take an in-depth look at the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement so that you can begin to familiarize yourself with the curriculum that students are using in their regular classes and how your tutoring sessions will supplement that learning. The Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement, which we'll also refer to as the TN-FSCS, is the curriculum that MNPS uses for foundational literacy skills in 1st and 2nd grade. The TN-FSCS Assessment and Remediation Guide, or ARG, will be used by MNPS Accelerating Scholars tutors to support learning in early literacy for 1st and 2nd grade students. The TN-FSCS uses a systematic and explicit approach to sounds-first instruction to help all students gain the foundational skills necessary to become proficient readers. The supplement was developed by Tennessee district leaders, teachers, and nationally recognized literacy experts, David and Meredith Libens, to be used by Tennessee districts, teachers, parents, and higher education agencies to support students' foundational literacy skills. The Assessment and Remediation Guide, or ARG, focuses on specific skills with which students may need additional help. Accelerating Scholars High-Impact Tutoring will use materials from the ARG to support students with reading fluency and comprehension skills. The TN-FSCS is unique because it focuses on early literacy using a sounds-first approach. This image shows how the TNFSCS instruction progresses from supporting students to identify environmental sounds, to segmenting sentences, to blending and segmenting syllables, to isolating specific phonemes, and finally, to blending and segmenting phonemes. Each of these steps is an important part of phonological awareness development and will be explained in greater detail later in this module. Emphasizing sounds first is an essential part of reading and phonics. On the next slide, we'll explore why an emphasis on phonemic awareness is important for our students. Phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics are three terms that will be important throughout this training module and within your early literacy tutoring sessions. Phonological awareness is the ability to recognize and manipulate the spoken parts of sentences and words. Phonemic awareness is part of phonological awareness and focuses specifically on the ability to notice, think about, and work with the individual sounds, or phonemes, in spoken words. Phonics focuses on sound and letter relationships, the connection between the sounds and their written symbols. When teaching students to read, there's a temptation to jump straight into phonics instruction because we might think if we want children to read, they need to be looking at words, right? Well, not so fast. The quote on the screen by Wiley Blevins, the author of A Fresh Look at Phonics, writes that many students struggle with phonics because they don't have the prerequisite phonemic awareness skills. Research shows that approximately 20% of students lack phonemic awareness. Many of these students will fall behind their peers and/or be diagnosed with a disability. However, phonemic awareness can be taught, and it doesn't take a great deal of time to bring many students' phonemic awareness skills up to a level at which phonics instruction begins to make sense. As few as 11 to 15 hours of intensive phonemic awareness training spread out over an appropriate time produce results. The goal of this instruction is understanding how words work. Phonemic awareness and alphabet recognition are the two best predictors of early reading success and must be addressed for phonics instruction to work. TNFSCS takes significant strides in the curriculum to address both phonemic awareness and alphabet recognition. Why a robust phonemic awareness component from pre-K to second grade? Basic phonemic awareness is commonly done a fair amount in kindergarten, a little bit in pre-K programs, and a little bit in first grade. A number of studies have shown that this is not enough for all students, and we need to do more work in this area. The research shows that students who can do these types of activities accurately and quickly in less than 2 seconds are more likely to be proficient word readers. The research also shows this ability can be taught through simple, fun, and game-like activities while building these skills and a variety of other verbal skills for all students. The phonemic awareness component of the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement demonstrates the need to continue phonemic awareness instruction beyond first grade. And the curriculum is designed to provide this robust foundation through second grade. TNFSCS is also unique in promoting equity in literacy learning because many students need additional practice, and the lesson sets are provided within the curriculum give multiple opportunities with layered practice and reading activities. MNPS Accelerating Scholars Tutors work to engage students in both sounds first and reading activities so that students can develop a strong foundation in phonological awareness so that they can discriminate and manipulate sounds at the different levels of speech. During Accelerating Scholars tutoring sessions, tutors maximize learning time to leverage reading activities that promote the following: bridging skills to move from oral language to reading and writing, helping students understand at the largest level words within sentences, and to discriminate word parts like syllables, digging deeper into the phoneme level of onset rhyme or first consonant sounds. Here are different tasks that help students grow in phonological awareness. Task 1, clap the words in this sentence. He went to the store. Task 2, say it fast after I say it slow. Going. Task 3, what is the first sound in the word sing? Task 4, what sound is in the middle of the word dip? Notice how the tasks progress from focusing at the word level all the way to the phoneme level, or from easier to more complex and harder skills. Here are some additional practice tasks that help students develop the capacity to discriminate and manipulate sounds at different levels of speech. For example, task 1, change the C in cage to P. What word do you have now? Task 2, say blank without the ol. Phoneme manipulation tasks include substituting a sound, deleting a sound, adding a sound, and help students segment phonemes, blend phonemes, and isolate specific phonemes. The sound position in the word affects the challenge level of advanced phonemic manipulation tasks. For example, as you saw in task 1, replacing the first sound is simpler than task 2, deleting a medial sound like the ol made by the L in blank. Previous research noted that many students who struggle with slow word recognition need systematic phonics instruction. However, students also need more. They may not ever learn to recognize words effortlessly and automatically without developing advanced phonemic awareness. In other words, many students need instruction in basic as well as advanced phonemic awareness, which is what this resource component has been built to provide. The TNFSCS contains embedded instruction dedicated to supporting the acquisition of advanced phonemic awareness skills so that all students get the skills they need to become proficient readers. We continue to emphasize the importance of the Sounds First approach to early literacy development. Both the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement and Core Knowledge Language Arts emphasize this approach. Students will need to hear and recognize words in order to read and write. In a moment, we'll ask that you pause this training module video and access the supplemental training video links. There's a video on the Sounds First approach that we'd like for you to watch. While this video's intended audience says that it's K-2 teachers and leaders, we know that the Sounds First approach is effective and beneficial to any students struggling with foundational skills or decoding. Please take a moment to pause this video and watch the Sounds First approach. Again, you can access this link on the supplemental video training link. When you've watched the video, please come back to this training and resume. Now let's take 2 minutes, or however long you need. You can pause the module in just a moment to reflect on what you heard during the Sounds First video. What major lesson did you take away from this video? Why is it important to lead with letter sounds as opposed to letter names? We've learned that when working closely with early readers, we should lead with a sounds-first approach. This slide shows how phonological awareness, phonics and word recognition, and fluency all come together when leading a reading approach using sounds first. A sounds first approach acknowledges the fact that children's ability to notice and manipulate sounds is the first step in foundational skills development. This approach puts sounds first in two ways. Number one, the youngest children work extensively in isolated sound practice or phonological awareness, even before beginning to identify letters. And number two, foundational skills lessons continue to begin with sounds of words and emphasize sound patterns, even as children shift their focus to phonics and decoding, or practicing letter sound correspondences, word recognition, and fluency, along with advanced phonemic awareness. Older research indicated that students should move away from phonological awareness and focus on phonics in first and second grade. Take a moment to view this example of a sounds first activity that your students will encounter in their core classes. Notice how the activity requires students to focus on the syllables before moving to specific phonemes, as we saw a few moments ago in the progression of phonological awareness skills. The methods that you used in the sounds first activities will also be brought over to the main activities that you're teaching your students during your tutoring sessions. An example of this can be found here. I'll give you a moment to look over it. Feel free to pause the video here as well. And now that we've reviewed the sounds first approach, let's become familiar with another essential part of helping students become fluent readers. Earlier in this module, you learned that blending is one of the key skills tutors will use with students as they work to decode words and understand the texts they're reading in tutoring sessions. Accelerating Scholars tutors have an important role to support students with learning to blend words. In phonics, blending is a way for students to decode words. With blending, students fluently join together the individual sounds or phonemes in a word. With a word like jam, students start by sounding out each individual phoneme, j, and, then slowly blend those sounds together, j, and. Finally, they're able to read the word jam. In your supplemental video links, you can view this video shown below that gives an overview of blending as a key strategy to support the students that you're tutoring in early literacy. Another important part of building fluent readers includes segmenting words. Segmenting is a strategy that helps develop students' phonemic awareness, which is part of phonological awareness, as we learned. Segmenting and blending are the two most critical skills in the development of phonemic awareness. Segmenting involves identifying individual sounds or phonemes in a word. Students should practice segmenting initial sounds, onset rhyme, and individual sounds in a word. Segmenting tasks take place orally without the written word. Again, please go to the supplemental video training link and watch the video shown below to get a more in-depth overview about how you can use segmenting to support students in your tutoring sessions. After watching both of the videos on segmenting and blending, reflect on these questions. What resonates most with you about blending? What resonates most with you about segmenting? Think about how you'll be sure to incorporate these skills into your daily tutoring sessions as you work with students to decode words and understand the text that they're reading. As we've shared, the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement provides a lot of opportunities for students to practice. Sometimes the skills practice happens out of context, and sometimes it happens in context. When tutors work with students by engaging them with stories from the decodable reader, which we'll talk about later, you're emphasizing working with skills in context. It's important to ensure that students consistently experience both types of practice. Having multiple opportunities to engage in practice gives students greater chances at increasing their phonological and phonemic awareness and becoming proficient readers. Within your sessions, you'll see practice in context as students are reading decodable passages. You'll also see that we've incorporated practice out of context in the form of word work, where students are working with writing and spelling the words using the sounds that they've learned. Building word knowledge is essential. Having strong word awareness or knowing a lot of words is as important to being a good reader as foundational skills are. Young students are sponges for new words and learn new meanings with ease. Tutors should note that it is powerful and important to stop whenever you see a word you think your students may not know and ask them to tell you if they know it or not. Then quickly and simply define it before moving on. This should be done before or after an activity so the flow is not disrupted. That powerful practice is built into the Sounds First activities. It actively builds vocabulary along with phonemic awareness. Words that students engaged in that grade may not yet be familiar with are called out if they can be quickly and easily explained. These words are underlined to draw teacher attention to them. Sometimes, especially with multisyllabic words used in some of the activities, the words are abstract and unusual, tricky to explain. Those words were not underlined because they may take too much time to explain adequately, and children are not likely to encounter them again for years. Both the Assessment and Remediation Guide, which we use for first and second grade, and Core Knowledge Language Arts include decodable readers or reading passages as resources. First and second grade students will have passages included in their student workbooks. The slide below shows an image of the cover of one of the first grade decodable readers and a snapshot of what the text looks like within that story. Each reader includes multiple stories. Some tutoring sessions will include time designated for students and tutors to engage in reading a story and answering questions about the story that was read. When reading the stories, it's important that tutors allow students to read while they listen. A good rule of thumb would be to display the image of the reader on the screen while the student reads it out loud. Please note that students will also have hard copies of their workbooks. After reading each story in the student reader, students will answer questions about what they've read. As students are reading and selecting answer choices, it's important for tutors to remember to remind students to refer back to the text for information, especially if they're stuck or unable to answer the questions. The slide below shows an example of after reading questions that you might find in your teacher guide. Notice that the tutor prompt is clearly highlighted, so you'll know exactly what questions you can ask your students. Now let's take an even deeper look at the curriculum materials. We've learned a lot about essential components to building a good foundation for early literacy. Now let's dig deeper into the materials that you'll use during your time with your students. To access the curriculum materials, let's get started by ensuring that you know which grade level you've been assigned and which day in the tutoring cycle that you'll begin tutoring. For the most part, you'll want to start on week 1, day 1. Next, you'll be able to locate the curriculum source for your grade level. Tutors can access all curriculum materials directly in Go School Box by clicking on the Resource tab at the top of your menu bar. You'll then select View More for the resource you want to access, and you'll be able to open and download the resource. Curriculum resources and these training modules are available through both Go Schoolbox and the Tutor Resources page of the MNPS website. Let's review the major resources that tutors will need when conducting your tutoring sessions. In the next slide, we'll explore what these resources look like and detail how you can use them in your early literacy tutoring sessions. You'll have a teacher guide and a student workbook. You'll utilize both of these resources to prepare for your tutoring sessions. We want to note again, students will have access to a printed student workbook for their tutoring sessions, but it's also helpful to share your screen. And in the next module, you'll learn how to upload specific workbook pages prior to your tutoring session. The teacher guide is the most essential part of the planning process. Tutors should read the teacher guide carefully prior to the start of each session. You'll find the teacher guide to be the most essential tool when planning each session. The teacher guide outlines the lessons explicitly for tutors and details specific actions that you should take at each point during the session. The excerpt on this slide is a sample of the first grade literacy teacher guide. The teacher guide begins with an in-depth explanation of each of our standard session components. You'll see below, we start with a session opening and fluency warm-up activity, followed by connections to previous learning, an introduction of the lesson objective, and then tutoring routines or explicit modeling of skills. Each session begins with a session opening and fluency warm-up activities. This component of a tutoring session prepares students for instruction and focuses student attention on following directions. These brief session openings allow the tutor-student relationship to be established and to grow over time. Each session begins with a fluency warm-up to help students foster automatic recognition and promote expressive reading. As the fluency warm-ups are read together by both tutor and student, the goal is to help the student build confidence to read their text independently later in the session. Fluency warm-ups consist of either two voices, tutor reads column 1, student reads column 2, and the lines in bold are read together, or play parts. Tutor and student will each read lines for a selected character, together completing the story. Narrator lines are indicated by a star. After the opening, we move to the setting purpose portion of the session. For first and second grade literacy, this part contains two distinct goals. We want to connect to previous learning. You'll shift the conversation smoothly to a follow-up from your previous session. If necessary, you can use this time to remediate any unfinished learning that students will need. This component of a tutoring session supports activation of foundational knowledge and abilities for reading and spelling. And then you'll introduce today's learning objective. Give students a preview of the specific work that you'll do today. Next, we move into the main activities, tutoring routines and explicit modeling. This component of the session provides teacher-directed time to prepare students to engage with the instruction. The tutor will provide direct instruction and modeling with challenging sound spellings targeted for instruction. The instruction will then move into guided practice, which is a transition from teacher-directed explicit instruction into supported instructional time, working with the skills being targeted in the lesson. Each session consists of an explicit modeling activity that focuses on foundational phonological awareness skills. The goal is to help students practice these skills explicitly in order to be able to connect this understanding to the text reading for the day. Next, there's the connection to grade level content. This is the crucial step of the lesson in which the tutor is intentional and incorporates connections with the student's grade level content that's being taught in the classroom. You'll have a text reading. Students will read a text out loud as independently as possible. The text contains the same content as the fluency warm-up to provide students with extra support and confidence. The pacing guide prompts tutors to guide students in noticing where the target sound, the sound reviewed during explicit modeling, occurs within words throughout the passage. You'll have comprehension. Tutors will ask students comprehension questions before, during, and after reading. Your teacher guide includes scripted prompts to support tutors in asking the comprehension questions. Finally, there's word work. After reading, students will have the opportunity to practice with tricky words in their workbooks. These are words that do not follow typical sound spelling rules. Tutors can upload the workbook pages and encourage interaction by allowing the pencil tool on the whiteboard. Again, you'll learn much more about all of your virtual classroom capabilities in Module 3. Finally, we have the session closing. At the end of your tutoring session, leave some time to check in with your student to determine how they felt about the task of the day and what you might improve for the next session. End the session with positive reflections for the students. Following the explanation of session components, your teacher guide has a helpful table that you can use to jump to a specific lesson. We hope that this will help you find your place efficiently without needing to scroll through past sessions. Next, you'll see a section providing overviews of the units that your students will encounter in class this semester and the basic skills of each unit. Your tutoring sessions will supplement the same content that students are already working on in their classes. So you should see strong alignment between these unit overviews and the materials you're using in your tutoring sessions. Next, you'll find the session plans. For each day, for example, as you see below, week 1, day 2, you'll have a detailed session plan. Notice again that your tutor prompts are highlighted in yellow to specifically draw your attention to the scripted questions or statements that you can use during your session. The additional materials that you will need are also hyperlinked, so you can click to find the Two Voices fluency practice for the story Beth, as seen here. You'll also have a link to the student workbook, so you can refer to the pages exactly as your students see them. You'll notice in the connection to grade level content, you'll find a hyperlink to the text reading. You'll also find the comprehension questions, specifically broken down to before reading, during reading, and after reading. Finally, you'll find a hyperlink to the word work and space for a session closing. As we've mentioned, your students will have access to a printed copy of the student workbook, which means they'll have hard copies of the fluency practice, the text that you're reading each session, and the word work. Here are examples of how students would see the text and the word work they might encounter during a tutoring session. Let's take a moment to pause and reflect. What aha moments or surprises have you experienced as a result of this module and the deeper background in early literacy tutoring? What questions do you still have about reading foundational skills or the first and second grade curriculum materials? Here are some quick notes for successful planning for tutors of accelerating scholars. Note that tutors should set aside at least 15 minutes to plan for a successful session execution prior to the start of each tutoring session. Also, you should log in 3 to 5 minutes before the start of each virtual session to be sure that you're on time when the students arrive to the session. Here are some essential things to keep in mind when wrapping up your tutoring sessions. Finish the activity of the day, or if you run out of time, at least make sure you're at a good stopping place. Be sure to give your student positive feedback about his or her effort or any specific praise from the day. And if time allows, you can preview the pacing guide for what you'll be working on in the next tutoring session. Now that we know how to access materials to plan a tutoring session, let's review a few simple practices to keep in mind when working with early literacy students. Here are a few final reminders for good planning and practice. Students should do most of the talking and reading in your session. Read the entire section of the teacher guide before conducting your tutoring session. And lead students in sounding out words as opposed to telling them how to say the word. We'd love to hear from you. What questions do you still have about the curriculum materials for first and second grade literacy? Please share any questions by emailing tutoring@mnps.org so that we can ensure you have all the information you need to be a successful tutor from day one. Each school has a tutor lead who is designated to assist tutors and students with making sure our program runs smoothly. The tutor lead should be your first line of contact in the event of an emergency or if you have any school-specific questions. If you have questions about policy, tutoring practices, or anything beyond the school level, you can reach out to tutoring@mnps.org. If you have questions about the Go Schoolbox platform, please also direct those to tutoring@mnps.org. Thank you for serving as an Accelerating Scholars tutor. Your contribution to student learning is invaluable. And thank you for taking the time to complete this module. You may now move on to Module 3.